What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, Zido here. So we've been waiting about 3 months for this specific showdown. Today, we're finally breaking down two mice that have been sitting on my desk, begging for a direct comparison. The Corsair Sabre V2 Pro Ultralight and the DareU A950 Air Cicada Wing. Now, to understand these peripherals, we have to acknowledge their origin. The Finalmouse Medium. Both of these, along with the Incott 029 Pro, are essentially plastic interpretations of that legendary magnesium shape. While I will touch on the Incott later, today is strictly about the Corsair and the DareU. Visually, the A950 and Sabre V2 Pro are virtually identical. We are looking at a 99% shape match. It is fair to say Corsair effectively cloned the DareU geometry, refining the internal specs and surface finish. However, these aren't exact one-to-one replicas of the original Finalmouse Medium. We see micro tweaks in the front end height, and the curvature of the side walls, the peak of the middle hump, and the slope of the posterior. Even the overall length has visual discrepancies visible to the naked eye, but for those with high tactile sensitivity, there's a nuance. The waist width on the A950 feels fractionally narrower. It is a minute detail, but with my grip style, that slight inward curve provides a more locked-in sensation compared to the marginally broader feel of the Sabre V2 Pro. However, I do really want to have a quick mention that in hand, the Corsair does feel a lot more comfortable than the DareU A950 Air Cicada Wing. As we can see on the yellow shade, the Corsair is abruptly thinner and higher than the DareU, but the back hump of the DareU is more full-filled, and that's why it causes the uncomfortable when it's in your hand. Moving on to the surface finish, on the Sabre V2 Pro, the coating is undeniably present. It offers a premium, velvety tactility that feels significantly higher end than the A950, but here is the problem: durability. After a short period of use, the coating developed permanent black staining and oil marks. For a flagship product carrying a premium price tag, seeing the finish degrade visually is heartbreaking. I cannot classify this as a good coating if it ruins the aesthetic integrity so quickly. The DareU A950 conversely feels like raw, unrefined plastic. It is slippery and lacks that sophisticated grip. However, this does not negatively impact my performance. More importantly, it doesn't stain. I would rather have a consistent, cheap-feeling plastic than a premium coating that looks destroyed after a week. Regarding weight distribution, we have two top-tier contenders. My unit of the A950 weighs in at 34.20 grams, actually lighter than the advertised 35 grams. The Sabre V2 Pro is 35.65 grams, also lighter than the advertised 36 grams. When holding them at their narrowest point, the DareU feels slightly front-heavy. It's minor, but as an honest reviewer, I have to note it. The Corsair distributes its mass more evenly, making it feel slightly lighter when lifted in the air despite being physically heavier by 1 gram. That said, in intense FPS scenarios, the A950 feels superior. It has a hollow sensation that translates to a feeling of effortlessness during rapid flicks. However, if you ask me about reliability, can I clutch this round? I lean towards the Sabre V2 Pro. The superior coating grip and crisp switch actuation provide a higher sense of confidence in critical moments. Speaking of build, we have to address the structural integrity. Random Frank P already raised concern about Corsair sacrificing rigidity for weight, but in my hands, the A950 feels even less secure. When I removed the stock skates, the chassis emitted audible cracking sounds that made me wince. Furthermore, the A950 uses a screwless design. For a mouse manufactured in late 2025, sealing the internals behind the snap-fit shell is baffling. It makes modding, specifically replacing the scroll encoding, unnecessarily difficult. But considering I picked this up for $30, I can forgive the cheaper assembly. Mechanically, this is where the Corsair Sabre V2 Pro justifies its existence, and where the DareU falls flat. The Corsair scroll wheel is a masterpiece, smooth, silent, and tactile. It aligns perfectly with my preferences. The A950 unfortunately is a disaster here. Scrolling up generates a plastic on plastic grinding noise, creating a sensation of rattling and creaking. It feels loose and poorly toleranced. The main clicks on the A950 also suffer. They lack the crispness and snap of the V2, feeling noticeably heavier. However, the worst offender is the pre-travel. If you click at the very front of the button, you will notice significant travel before activation. If you press too hard, the shell actually bends. I have pressed the buttons almost to the chassis without registering a click, which introduces a feeling of perceived latency. The Sabre V2 Pro wins here easily. The clicks are snappy, responsive, and have minimal pre-travel. However, the narrative flips when we discuss about the side buttons. While both mice exhibit similar amounts of pre-travel here, the actuation force on the A950 Air is lighter and the rebound is faster. I utilize side buttons heavily for in-game abilities. I need them to be spammable without being so stiff that I introduce micro shakes to my aim when pressing them. The A950 nailed this balance, completely outperforming the stiff side buttons on the Corsair. Now, let's talk about the internals. Here's a technical detail that drastically changes the value proposition: sensor placement. Despite sharing the same DNA, the implementation varies. The Incott 029 Pro has the highest sensor position, the Sabre V2 Pro has the lowest, and surprisingly, the DareU A950 features a sensor position that is an exact 1-to-1 match with the original Finalmouse. This elevates the A950 from a simple clone to a functional twin. Given that Final Meme is notorious for terrible QC and inflated pricing, the A950 becomes the best budget alternative. But here's the scandal. The Corsair Sabre V2 Pro's 8K polling rate is broken, but not just 8K. Except for 1K, any polling rate is broken. Aside from the web-based driver being bloated and offering bare minimum setting like DPI and polling rate swapping, the sensor performance at high polling rates such as 2K, 4K, 8K is unacceptable. During fast swipes, the sensor exhibits downward jitter and skipping frames, regardless of the mousepad surface. For a flagship product, this renders the high polling rate useless. The DareU A950 operates flawlessly. The 8K implementation is stable with no frame skipping or stuttering. The software experience is superior in every way. The app loads instantly and offers suit enthusiast features: motion sync, high performance mode, long distance enhanced mode, and a 1 millisecond response time. DareU even provides 2 different web driver and a full downloadable application. For a budget brand to outclass a peripheral giant like Corsair in software stability is shocking. Also, if you got the Corsair and you need to go inside of the web driver setting, it's gonna take ages to load your profile, which is weird. Even the unboxing experience favors the budget king. The A950 comes with accessories that feels like they actually care about the user. I'll upload a separate unboxing short so you can see the neat packaging. When you look at the price to performance ratio, the A950 is untouchable. It costs 1/3 to 1/5 the price of the Corsair. I bought mine for $30, which is lower than the usual $48 sale price. For that money, getting a top-tier shape and flawless sensor performance is a massive bargain. To summarize, I have many issues with the Corsair Sabre V2 Pro: the standing coding, the broken polling rates, and the poor software make it hard to justify for the flagship price. It is only 7 crays or the superior scroll wheel and grips main clicks. The DareU A950 Air Cicada wing conversely exceeds all of my expectations. Despite being the readily wheel and cheap feel, the performance is a solid 8 out of 10 compared to the V2 Pro. It is a massive bargain and has earned a spot as my main mouse for specific games. But if I have to choose, I would still go with the Corsair because it's more comfortable. And since we mentioned the Incott 029 Pro throughout this video, stay tuned, because my next review will be a deep dive into that mouse. It is another budget beast with the Finalmouse shape, but it has unique characteristics that have earned it a permanent spot in my main rotation. And that's it for today. Zido's out. Remember to stay hydrated and keep your aim consistent. Peace.